Hello, everyone. So I just wanted to provide you a reading of the notes. So I'll go through and read pages 14 through 16, which we're supposed to work on for Friday. And then also we're supposed to do the page 34, which is the song by Imagine Dragons. So I'll go through and read all that for you. And then towards the end of the week, I will provide you a copy with the notes. So if we start here, the Cold War, competition between the superpowers, background, what are proxy wars, which was the last set of notes we talked about. Where did the US and Soviet Union participate in these wars? Again, from the previous notes. And why did the superpowers not send in their own troops if the other country already had committed soldiers to the fighting? Section 2, Afghanistan. In April 1978, Afghanistan's government was overthrown by a communist regime. The new government had the support of the Soviet Union, but was not well liked by the majority of Muslims in Afghanistan. Rebel groups such as Mujahideen led attacks against the new communist government. In December 1979, the Soviet Union sent troops into Afghanistan to protect the communist government there. The Soviet goal of the Soviets was to subdue the Mujahideen. The rebel group also had the support of the US and other NATO nations in their fight against the Soviets. The US gave financial and military aid to the Afghan people and the Mujahideen. The Soviets found out that fighting the rebel group in that mountainous terrain of Afghanistan proved a far more difficult operation than they experienced before. With the financial aid of the US, the Soviet casualties and financial costs of the war increased to a point that the Soviet Union did not support the war. By 1988, the Soviet Union agreed to withdraw its troops. A. Why did the Soviets invade Afghanistan? B. Why did the US get involved in the war? C. How did the US influence the war? D. Why was the war more difficult than the Soviets expected? E. How was this war in Afghanistan similar to the ones in Vietnam and Korea? Section 3. Che Guevara. Che Guevara was an Argentinian Marxist who helped the Castros lead the communist revolution in Cuba. He played an intricate part in leading Fidel and Raul's troops to victory to overthrow the Cuban government and set up Fidel as a communist dictator. He played a part in establishing the start of nuclear silos in Cuba that would eventually lead to the Cuban Missile Crisis. He eventually left Cuba and tried to start other communist revolutions throughout Latin America. He was captured in Bolivia by the US CIA and Bolivian forces and executed for attempts to overthrow the government. Question A with that reading: who was Che? B. What role did he play in the Cold War? Section 4. Arms race. Following World War II and the dropping of the atomic bombs on Japan, the US and the Soviet Union completed in a form of militarism known as the arms race. During this time, the US and the Soviet Union poured vast amounts of money into research to create the best weapons and military technology available. The technological jump, as well as the number of weapons, would allow both countries to destroy the world many times over. Question A. What was the arms race? B. How do you think it influenced the Soviet-US relations during the Cold War? C. What are some potential problems with this type of militarism? D. What do the images below show about the arms race? E. Why is this a problem? Section 5. Space race. The arms race pushed itself into space, the final frontier of the arms race. Both superpowers attempted to launch satellites and people into space in an attempt to gain a military advantage over the other side. The Soviet Union launched the first satellite, Sputnik, in 1957, and the first cosmonaut, Yuri Gagarin, in 1961. Cosmonaut is the Russian word for astronaut. This caused the U.S. to invest heavily in science and math in schools and pushed the U.S. to put the first man on the moon in 1969. The space race was also an area for the arms races. Both countries developed ICBMs, which are intercontinental ballistic missiles, which are missiles that can go from one continent to the other, so Russia to the United States, and attempted missile shields. Question A. How was the space race a continuation of the arms race? B. Based on the image to the right, what were some major events that took place during this time? C. How do you think this type of competition affected the US and Soviet societies? All right, section 6, the last part of this notes. Ebb and flow of the Cold War. The Cold War would go through periods of heightening and easing of tensions on both sides. The first part of the Cold War saw these tensions increase as World War II ended and the arms race began. President Eisenhower attempted to calm the situation, but tensions were again ramped up under Kennedy and Johnson with the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Vietnam War. Under President Nixon, the US and USSR went through a period of détente, or a cooling of tensions. This policy saw the US and Soviets decrease hostilities as Nixon had improved relations with China and parlayed this relationship into a better one with the Soviets. The Sino-Soviet split made Russia uneasy about US-Chinese relations, and they also wanted to improve relations. The US and Soviets passed SALT I treaty, a limitation on arms as a result. After Nixon, tensions would increase under Carter and eventually reach a resolve under President Reagan and Premier Gorbachev. Part A. Describe the ebb and flow of the Cold War. What are times of tension and when were times of less tension? And question B. Why do you think that the Cold War went through these ebbs and flow? So that's this section of notes this week for Global. Good luck, and I will post a copy of the notes on Friday. Bye.